Is the Republic of Somalia now set to regain full control of its territories? I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Now, the onset of AMISOM's drawdown from Somalia has drawn mixed reaction, with a contested withdrawal of at least 1,000 troops by the end of February, triggering calls for an emergency African Union summit to revise plans of scaling back. In an interview with CGTN's Girum Chala in Addis Ababa, Dr. Alhaji Sarjo, the African Union's head of crisis management and post-conflict reconstruction, elaborated on the African Union's thinking behind the withdrawal of AMISOM from Somalia. He also addressed this recent development on the peace and security front. Let's listen in to that earlier interview.
Alhaji Sarjo, thank you very much for talking to CGTN. Let's talk about the African Union policy framework in general terms of a post-conflict reconstruction. What can you tell us about this policy?
I think, thank you, Girum. You are quite aware that this policy was adopted in Banjul in 2006. And the policy essentially addresses 6 broad areas from security, political, economic, related also to gender issues with respect to post-conflict reconstruction on the continent. And I think the overarching objective of the policy is to ensure that we build sustainable peace in countries that have gone into conflicts or those that are dealing with very difficult transitions. So it's a very comprehensive policy that is in place that helps us and gives us the mechanisms and the tools to respond to the post-conflict challenges or the challenges that are often associated with difficult transitions.
The African Union somehow is now feeling that the number of the 21,000+ troops on the ground should be downsized, and at the end of the day, AMISOM should leave Somalia, giving responsibilities for security forces of the country. But in general terms, what has prompted, what has informed this decision? Let's just begin with that.
I think it should be put in its right perspective. AMISOM or any peacekeeping mission for that matter, whether it's MONUSCO in DRC, MINUSMA in Mali, is not a substitute for the national authorities. So AMISOM has been in Somalia with the primary objective of stabilizing the situation and working with the Somali authorities to stand up their national security and defense forces. So if you are talking about the exit is not born out of any other consideration other than the desire and the realization that the Somali authorities are taking on a greater deal of the responsibilities for managing law and order and defense of their country. And I think AMISOM never went in there to stay forever. And it's obvious that at some point, AMISOM will have to move out. And I think even the withdrawal process is a gradual process. It's not a slash and burn approach where you just pick up and you leave. So essentially, I think the way to look at this is to say AMISOM never went into Somalia to replace the Somali authorities. It was there actually to strengthen the capacities of the various Somali institutions. And I think we are getting to that point, hence
Based on your assessments, let's say AMISOM has left Somalia. What is African Union's plan in the pocket based on post-conflict reconstruction issue? Or even do you believe that Somali forces can take over the peace and security situation of the country?
I think that is an assessment to be done by the professionals who are tasked with the mandate of assessing the readiness of the Somali National Security Forces. However, for us, when it comes to post-conflict reconstruction and stabilization in Somalia, even if AMISOM were to leave tomorrow, it doesn't mean the African Union is leaving. The African Union will continue to engage with the Somali authorities in order to build on the huge investments in human blood and treasure that we've really invested in Somalia for over the past 10 years. So we'll work with the Somali authorities to accompany them in order to implement the strategies and the policies and the programs that they have identified as Somalis. Because what is important here is to emphasize the principle of national ownership. I think you and I cannot pretend to know what is good for the Somalis better than themselves. So we are ready, and I think we continue to work with them to accompany them on this path of reconstruction and stabilization. So the Somali Transition Plan, which is designed by the Somalis with the support of the African Union and the United Nations, is very clear on where Somalia wants to go. So even in the post-AMISOM era, African Union will remain engaged, and I think the stabilization efforts will continue, and AU will be there for Somalia, going beyond the presence of the military, which is essentially AMISOM.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, at the moment, the Somali government, or even Burundi, which was asked to leave, to withdraw its 1,000 troops, which has done it earlier, I think, are not really confident enough when it comes to the plan of this, what they call quick withdrawal, and they need the revision of the drawdown plan until confidence is created. Will there be, perhaps, to create confidence and to come up with a better plan of a post-AMISOM era, do you think there needs to be a slowing down of drawing down the AMISOM forces from Somalia, perhaps?
I don't think there is any question over the pace of the planned withdrawal. This is a consensus process that has been reached through deep consultations. And I think anything that is going to happen will have to also be based on the consultations that informed the engagement of AMISOM going back to 2007. So going forward, I think there are mechanisms in place for the AU, the UN, and the Somali national authorities to continue their consultations. So that will continue.
Well, let's broaden this discussion a little bit more, and to help us delve into AMISOM's concept of operations and the implications of the gradual exit from Somalia, I'm now joined by Meresa Kasu in Addis Ababa. He's a researcher with the Institute for Security Studies. Also joining me in studio is Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, a conflict resolution expert and co-founder of the Horn International Institute for Strategic Studies. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me in this discussion. Dr. Mustafa, let me start off with you, because let's look at the concept as it is evolving now with AMISOM, though, because the African Union is gradually scaling back its true presence in Somalia. From 21,500 force, it will have exited Somalia by 2021. First of all, your take on that withdrawal?
AMISOM should not be withdrawing at this point in time. And there are a number of reasons that as to why it is a wrong time for AMISOM to exit. One is that Al-Shabaab still controls large part of the hinterland. From Kismayu to Mogadishu is a place where Al-Shabaab is controlling parts of, or significant parts of Shabelle area. Al-Shabaab is still in control of that area. If you look at just across the border from Kenya, Al-Shabaab is still controlling large swaths of land and territory in that part. And therefore, if AMISOM is going to withdraw or draw down at this point in time, it will be sending wrong signals to Al-Shabaab. Secondly, Beatrice, is the ideology. Al-Shabaab's ideology is still very potent and powerful in the hinterland, in the rural parts of Somalia. And that is something that AMISOM and the countries in the region and the United Nations should start working on how they're going to deal with the ideology.
All right, Meresa, let's get your thoughts, though. AMISOM should not be withdrawing from Somalia at this point. Do you agree?
It's not a withdrawing now, it is a reduction of forces. So if the reduction of forces is to balance the mission in terms of having the civilians and the police component, to increase the civilian and the police component, that is fine. But the withdrawal will give a signal to Al-Shabaab, as the first speaker say. It will give Al-Shabaab the confidence to do its military attack.
Well, Meresa, though, the idea is that the troops will have exited Somalia in total by 2021. This is like barely, it's 3 years away, though. Is the Somali National Army, though, and the police, as you mentioned, is it able to stabilize Somalia at this point?
Not really. But for the last 12 years now, AMISOM with heavy military has been in Somalia and fighting Al-Shabaab, but still Al-Shabaab is there. The threat posed by Al-Shabaab is there. Maybe in some cases it's increasing. It's not only Al-Shabaab now, the ISIS is also have a fertile grounds in Somalia. The threat of terrorism and violent extremism in Somalia is growing. That is clear. But the question is this type of violation or attack can be downgrading by military? AMISOM is basically a military operation. So what I say to the downsizing, if the downsizing is to increase the other components, I say the civilians and the policies, so that to work on the political engagement, even engaging with all actors in Somalia, including Al-Shabaab, that will be good. But if simply is for the interest of downsizing, exit, that will not help.
Right. What do you think, though, would have informed this decision by the African Union? What would have informed this decision to withdraw the troops gradually in that manner?
I think the Western countries in the West are pushing the African Union to draw down. I think it's tied to funding. Some of the countries in the West are tired of putting money that some may look or consider as bottomless pit, so to speak. And there seem to be very, even though the military approach has pushed back Al-Shabaab, which is now on its back foot, we still see that many in the West are saying that they cannot continue to fund this kind of operation. And there's been a very clear roadmap to actually empower Somali security forces and services, but that is something that hasn't been done very well.
I do want to come to your thought of that the international community is perhaps getting a little bit fatigued with what is going on in Somalia, because the EU delegation ambassador to Somalia, Michelle Kovon Uso, once said, and I quote, "We know that Al-Shabaab has not been defeated. We are committed to the mission, but there are other missions to be accomplished in other areas, and we have to give our support." Where does this leave Somalia then?
Yeah, this is not going to be a good thing for Somalia. If at all, then the thinking by the EU and other supporters is that they have other issues to deal with elsewhere. Now, look here, Somalia has been burning for the last so many years. Somalia has been under trouble. Even before Al-Shabaab came onto the picture, Somalia has been in trouble for a number of years. Now, 2007, 2008, Al-Shabaab came onto the scene and has been waging this war of attrition, fighting off whatever government that is in Somalia. Now, this tells you that the countries in the West will not be able to see through this mission, and therefore the African countries have to step in and deal with this issue.
Marissa, I'll come back to you again, because the UN Secretary General had expressed reservations in 2017, saying that the AMISOM troop cuts were not realistic. What exactly has changed since then?
The decision comes is two things. One is the AMISOM is resource issues. AMISOM is dependent. So the interest of international partners to support AMISOM is down. On the other hand, there is a commitment, interest from the Somalian local actors, government, including the government, so that the international community have much interest to support directly to AMISOM, to the Somalia security forces rather than the African Union mission in Somalia. So for these two reasons, I think the withdrawal is, the reduction is decided. So it is a little bit confusing, in fact, but nothing has been changed in terms of realities on the ground.
Kenya particularly has been quite vulnerable in this regard. How is Kenya receiving this news? What is Kenya's view on the troop withdrawal?
Yeah, I don't think Kenya is for the drawdown, to start with, for the very simple reason that Al-Shabaab is still active in the hinterland. As I said earlier, between Kismayo and Mogadishu, significant parts of Shabelle areas, and just across the border in Somalia. Kenya went in to try and, first of all, create a buffer between Kenya and Somalia, and in a zone that they'll be able to intercept Al-Shabaab before they come in. Now, that hasn't worked very well. Now, the best that Kenya can do to be part of AMISOM and to pursue Al-Shabaab. But then, if then the plan is to draw down, then this means that these guys will wait until 2021, and then they are going to start, they might even overrun the Somalian National Army positions. Remember, the mindset of a terrorist is they wait on you. They will sleep for 5 years and then hit you at when you are very vulnerable. As they told the Americans when they're in Afghanistan, you guys have the watch and they have the time. And so they've waited on the Americans in Afghanistan. Now Americans actually have to go to the negotiating table, and today is speaking to the Taliban so that they can finish up this conflict, if at all they're going to do that through negotiation.
Maressa Kasu and Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, do stay with us for the moment. We'll continue with this discussion. For now, we'll take a short break, but do stay tuned. The conversation continues on Talk Africa in a moment. Stay with us.
China Global Television Network. From broadcast centers in Beijing, Washington and Nairobi. A unique global perspective. 6 channels and a video content service. News when you want it and where you want it. On TV screens, websites, mobile platforms and social media. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to Talk Africa. Maressa Kasu still with us from Addis Ababa. Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali still with us here in Nairobi. Let's continue this discussion because I do want to come to you, Dr. Mustafa. Burundi has raised concern about that troop reduction and has actually called for a special summit to discuss this issue. What exactly are Burundi's concerns?
Yeah, well, partly is just like the other countries, the troop contributing countries, Burundi is concerned that, there isn't much, the AMISOM has succeeded to some extent, but it has not achieved all the objectives that it had when it went into Somalia. The second point here is that the Somali National Army is still incapable of containing Al-Shabaab, and therefore, if the drawdown is to start happening in the way that is being planned, then what will happen to SNA is that most likely they will just be overrun by Al-Shabaab in certain areas, and they'll just be, withdraw to Mogadishu. And this is not just a concern for Burundi only, but also the concern for many other troop contributing countries that are present in Somalia.
Because there are other countries involved as well, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Kenya, and Uganda. Maressa, do you think that these other countries in the region also share Burundi's concerns regarding the troop drawdowns?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yes. The concern that I would share is the decision is the 1,000 soldiers are only from Burundi. So Burundians are concerned once they reduce their forces from about 5,000, it's reducing 1,000, meaning they will remain around 4,000. So they have a concern with small contingent. They will not able to defend even themselves and others on the ground. And the next time is also they are just requesting on proportional reduction. The 1,000 should be from the all contributing countries, from Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, and Djibouti. But from the other countries, Yes, I didn't see any response from other countries, but that withdrawal from Burundi will complicate the reductions because they don't accept the decisions. So they recall for a meeting and further discussions and to revert the AU decisions.
Is it a possibility, though, Mustafa?
That this is going to go ahead. You see, what will happen here, Beatrice, is that Burundi is going to feel so vulnerable that they may say that they are withdrawing the other 4,000 immediately. Now, if you look at the way a troop formation or the way they have in their various sectors, is that you'll have the troop contributing country, whether it's a brigade or whatever you have. And then outside of that, in the outliers, you'll have the Somali National Army in the vicinity. Now, if you look at the way Al-Shabaab has been operating, for example, when it attacked the Kenyan camp in El Ade, they basically just went in. And what happened is that the sentries were taken by surprise. If they are going to deploy this kind of tactics, it means actually that we should be having a surge rather than a drawdown. You need more troops to be able to carry out surveillance. And you need this. The 5,000 Burundians also need some kind of protection. They are not fighting all the time. And therefore, if you reduce that by 1,000, are Burundians going to believe that the SNA are going to provide sufficient protection to the various camps that Burundians are in? I don't think that is going to be possible. And therefore, this particular debate that is ongoing, if we are really going to look at the reasons that Burundi have given forth, I think they should be allowed to still keep the 1,000. And in my opinion, all the other countries should be allowed, or enough resources should be put in place so that there could be a surge before an eventual drawdown.
So, Marissa, the last few months, though, has seen a more stable and secure Horn of Africa region. With the troop drawdown there, what kind of impact are we likely to see, you know, in Ethiopia, in Djibouti, in Kenya, generally in the Horn of Africa area?
I think that is clear. The force reduction and its implications on Al-Shabaab and the ISIS, they will definitely have more confidence that AMISOM is weak and they are on the start of withdrawing, and then they will enhance their own asymmetric attack and other means of attack, so that they will show all their capabilities in Somalia. So I feel afraid that this withdrawal, if there is no other means, like for example, I said earlier, if the reduction is to configure the ability of the mission, that is fine. But if it is simply for withdrawal, then it will be a loss for AMISOM that has been gained for the last 12 years.
The African Union, though, has come up with a concept known as the concept of operations, so, you know, that will guide AMISOM's activities through to 2021. Take us through the exit plan.
I think one is the reconfiguration of the brigades that are there to provide more protection to civilian population in the built-up areas. And this population, the civilian population, has been terrorized by Al-Shabaab. That's one of those bits that is there, Beatrice, in that particular concept. The other is to, in this areas of security, is to train and build up the capacity of the Somali police, the Somali intelligence, the Somali National Army to be able to take over from the troops that will be drawing down from the AMISOM, various AMISOM sectors. Now, the other bit is to encourage political resolution of some of the conflicts that they've been trying to do. We saw Mukhtar Robo decamping from Al-Shabaab and joining the mainstream, the mainline politics. This is what that particular concept note actually looks at in terms of, can they convince some of those who have joined Al-Shabaab to decamp from Al-Shabaab and join the political mainstream and stabilize the country, and in effect weakening Al-Shabaab.
Marissa, I do want to get a final thought from you, because Somalia has been in turmoil since the 1990s. AMISOM has been in place since 2007. There was IGAD before that. What lessons, though, has the region and the African Union in general learned from its presence in Somalia?
There is a significant changes in Somalia that everyone can understand. 12 years back, Somalia was a full stateless, but currently we can see there is a federal government structure. There is 5 states. There are a little bit also security forces established at federal, state level, and the country is, in terms of economy, is also changing. This all things comes through the support of the African Union, through the African Union mission in Somalia. So I think all those achievements are credited to the mission. So this is the view from the African Union, I think. That's why the fear is, as the drawdown comes, what will be next? Will the gain so far will be maintained or will be reversed? That is the question now.
Dr. Mustafa, though, this was supposed to be a 6-month project with AMISOM. It has rolled on to over 10 years. Obviously, the African Union has some lessons to learn here from its presence in Somalia.
Yeah, absolutely. And one is to not think that you can go into a theater of war that is asymmetric in nature and within 6 months deal with decisively with the problem. This is largely an ideological problem to a large extent and to a smaller extent military. And even though AMISOM has tried, has struggled to actually get part of the part of the land that was controlled by Al-Shabaab and handed that back to the Somali National Army, it still has a long way to go. The other lesson, and that's important, is that multilateralism is an important way to deal with the challenge that Somalia has been going through. As long as that multilateralism is to build the capacity of the Somalia. Now, if AMISOM draws down by 2021, what will happen is that Somalia will bilaterally engage Turkey, engage Qatar, maybe even engage Russia to come in and help them. And that might cause other challenges that are of security in nature.
Dr. Mustafa Ali and Marissa Kasu, we leave it there for the moment, and that's all we have time for this week. But thank you to my guests for sharing their insights. Marissa Kasu in Addis Ababa is a researcher with the Institute for Security Studies, and also in studio, Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, a conflict resolution expert and co-founder of the Horn International Institute for Strategic Studies. Remember to keep the conversation going online through our Facebook and Twitter handles, and also catch these and previous episodes on YouTube playlist and the CGTN Africa website. Remember to tune in again next week for more Talk Africa. From me, Beatrice Marshall, and the team in Nairobi. Goodbye.
This is CGTN,
China Global Television Network.
On March 30th, the world's top cross-country athletes descend on Aarhus, Denmark for the 43rd edition of the IAAF World Cross Country Championships. East Africa's athletics powerhouses are in the middle of selecting their finest to go in search of gold at the event. In Kenya, the process of putting together a team for Denmark got underway on Saturday in Eldoret. On Matchpoint tonight, we see if African teams can replicate their form in Kampala 2 years ago and whether they'll be ready this time around. Hello and welcome to Matchpoint here on CGTN. It's the sports program bringing you all things African sport, both from the